Thank you for joining us at the Roundtable.
Brought to you by Community Education Arts, a nonprofit organization based in Noblesville, Indiana.
I'm Alice Cavanagh-Scober, president of CEARts.
And I'm Sarah E. Morin, secretary of CEARts. Let's sit down
at the Roundtable. Tentative number 1. Okay, and I'm happy we chose Dracula. When we were on had our little lunch break earlier, I did go back and look at our Portrait of Jenny quotes just to make sure we made the right decision. I'm like, I love them so much, but I think we made the right decision this year.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
I feel like we're in a good place.
That's good.
Yeah. All right. So now we got to tackle the big one. Gone with the wind. This is going to be a challenge. Now, I have to say, I am so thrilled with myself that I only have like 2.5 pages of quotes, because literally I could quote this book almost from page 1 to page end, which is probably tells you more about me than anybody needs to know. But the very first quote in our list is, I think, one that I think I put in my little personal notes on the side. Most people do not know this passage exists. And here it is. There was no one to tell Scarlett that her own personality was more attractive than any masquerade she might adopt. Had she been told, she would have been pleased but unbelieving, and the civilization of which she was a part would have been unbelieving too, for at no time before or since had so low a premium been placed on feminine naturalness. I thought, I'm like, I want people to know that about her,
That's
I want them to see her personality through Margaret Mitchell's eyes. And this is Margaret Mitchell, the narrator, writing, in the book. It's early on. It's early, she's describing her character to us as she writes it. So then my next quote is Scarlett, talking about marriage, and opposite of Joe in Little Women, if you will. I wish to heaven I was married, she said resentfully as she attacked the yams with loathing. I'm tired of everlastingly being unnatural and never doing anything I want to do. I'm tired of acting like I don't eat more than a bird, and walking when I want to run, and saying I feel faint after a waltz, when I could dance for 2 days and never get tired. I'm tired of saying how wonderful you are to fool men who haven't got 1/2 the sense I've got, and I'm tired of pretending I don't know anything, so men can tell me things and feel important while they're doing it. I can't eat another bite, I think that's great that in that moment, she lists all these things she's tired of, and then for the rest of the book, she doesn't hear Rhett Butler literally saying to her, I admire those very things about you. She doesn't see his love, his true love, for her true self, even though very early on in the book, she flat out lists exactly what she's tired of. She's tired of pretending to be something she's not, and yet she never can recognize until the very end of the book that there's this man who sees her for exactly who she is and loves her anyway. Loves her because of it, not anyway, because of it. And so that quote to me is an entryway into that discussion of self-awareness and the romantic ideals of she can only see love reflected by men who truly are just lusting after her. They just see her outer quality, her beauty. They don't see who she really is, but she thinks that's love because that's what she was brought up to believe. It's how you appear and how men respond to that. That's what you're supposed to get. That's what you're supposed to react to. She can't even comprehend what Rhett is actually offering her and how he genuinely loves the real her. Because she can't even see that she is that real person. So anyway, it's fascinating to me. That's fascinating.
Yeah. I like that one. It would pair well with our discussion of Jane Eyre.
Yeah.
And
comparing the first quote you just read to that one, I like the second one because it shows more of her personality.
Well, and she's speaking, yeah. It's actually in her voice, the character's voice, rather than the author's voice. So, yeah, that's more interactive, I guess.
And I just love the idea she's attacking the yams with the loathing.
Well, and that's a pretty famous scene in the movie, too, when Mammy's trying to tighten her stays and make her eat before she has to go off to the barbecue, you know, and she's just like, I don't have been so silly to catch a man. And they don't, she doesn't get to say all this in the movie. And that's something that in workshop I think would be really important. We could show that scene from the movie where, you know, she's sitting down grumpily with the napkin tucked in her dress and she's shoving biscuits or whatever in her face. I don't know if it's yams. But in the book, she lists all this stuff. And in the movie, all she says, I'm so tired of trying to, you know, why does a girl have to be so foolish to catch a man, or whatever the line is. That's what they did with this text, is they turned it into like a little one-liner in the movie. And so you don't get the richness of what she really says in the movie. And I think the book that's why I love the book so much, because you get so much more. Anyway, so on and on. So the next quote is very famous. Scarlett, after she has, you know, finally made it back to Tara from burning Atlanta with, you know, poor old Melanie and her newborn baby and Prissy in the back of the buckboard, and they finally made it, and she's, you know, everything's a disaster at Tara. She goes out into what used to be the vegetable garden and digs up a carrot and eats it and promptly vomits. And then that's when she, you know, makes her, right before intermission in the movie, but in the book she says, I'm going to live through this, and when it's over, I'm never going to be hungry again. No, nor any of my folks. If I have to steal or kill, as God is my witness, I'm never going to be hungry again. Okay, now, I think that's a very famous quote. Everybody will recognize it. I would just like to say that if we're doing the discussion in terms of war times, pandemic times, stuff like that, I mean, I personally will never be out of toilet paper again. I will, from henceforth, if we survive this, you know, we will always have extra toilet paper on hand, stacked up somewhere. I mean, that's kind of funny, but, you know, it's that idea of the things you take for granted that are always going to be there. And then you go through something like, you know, the Civil War, or the burning of your home, or, you know, a pandemic or whatever, and you suddenly realize, you know, I'm going to have to do some things, and I'm going to do them because I'm going to take care of my people, you know. And this is what she's doing. It's not just her that's never going to be hungry again. When she says, nor any of my folks, that her folks include a huge amount of people. These are not just her blood relatives she's talking about. And that's, you know, that's important, I think, you know. So anyway,
yeah, interesting.
That's an interesting quote. And then when we were talking about romances and great romances and everything, Ashley says at one point to Scarlett about Melanie, she is the only dream I ever had that lived and breathed and did not die in the face of reality. I tear up. I just think that's such a beautiful, true love sentiment. I mean, you know, but that's all it is. You know, it's not much more than just a really beautifully written, you know, sentiment of how he feels about his true love. And I love it for that, so I had to put it in there. I don't know that it's enough meat on the bone for what we do with our NICE project, but
yeah, it's a little sparse for digging for artistic stuff, but it is a beautiful quote.
It's just, I mean, it's really, really lovely. Okay. So my next quote is very well known, but I think it has a lot of subtext and, you know, under not obvious meaning. It's Rhett Butler to Scarlett. Her second husband has just died badly. Well, it's a different story, but it's the same story. I mean, it's the same book, but, you know, it's a different quote. I can't go all my life waiting to catch you between husbands. It's just like, you know, his timing is so funny. And then the one that I think gives a little more is, no, I don't think I will kiss you, although you need kissing badly. That's what's wrong with you. You should be kissed, and often, and by someone who knows how. I'm so offended by this quote.
Yeah, I gotta say, that is so presumptive.
As much as I love Rhett Butler, and I know in the context of the story, he's absolutely right about her, because women should be able to enjoy sex just as much as men, and that is what he's actually saying to her. That is what the illusion is that she's been married, and as a lot of people who've seen the movie or read the book know, she's been married to a boy, in his words, and an old man. That's what he calls her first and second husband. That's how he references them. He is young. Rhett Butler's in his prime. He's sexual. He's a man's man. He's a manly man, and he's the one that can satisfy her sexually. And it's just so offensive. But in the book, in the story, it's a true statement. And so you have to, again, think about, this is the Civil War era we're talking about. In the South, women were not sexual unless they were prostitutes, So he's both insulting her because she's a lady, not a prostitute. She's not supposed to enjoy sex or even know what it's about, right? Even though she's been married twice, right? And so using the kissing as the metaphor for sexual everything. It's just
right.
Kissing he's talking about. But, he uses the word kissing, but we know he means the whole deal. So it's very layered, it's very layered in terms of the context of feminine roles and social expectations for women at the time. So that one, to me, because of that, has a lot of, then it kind of leads into the next quote, which is just a great quote: "With enough courage, you can do without a reputation." That he says that to her as well. That's just a quote that I like. So.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of a Susan B. Anthony quote. So it's very interesting to me that Rhett Butler and Susan B. Anthony said something similar.
Yeah. And
yeah, she said, careful, cautious people always casting about to preserve the reputation can never foment a rebellion. And I'm like, well, it's kind of the same thing.
I also think it might be Eleanor Roosevelt or Dorothy Parker that this quote gets ascribed to, or a very similar quote gets ascribed to them quite often. But it's actually Rhett Butler. So then my next one, I think, is really a great quote about Scarlett's perspective, if you will. It's a turning point for her. And I also think it relates to the pandemic stuff now, feelings that might be similar. So, when she arose at last and saw again the black ruins of 12 Oaks, her head was raised high, and something that was youth and beauty and potential tenderness had gone out of her face forever. What was past was past. Those who were dead were dead. The lazy luxury of the old days was gone, never to return. And as Scarlett settled the heavy basket across her arm, she had settled her own mind and her own life. There was no going back, and she was going forward. Now, this is kind of the middle of the story, and most people do not see her character with, I don't think that's a common thought about Scarlett O'Hara, that there's this moment where she has to decide that, unlike so many of the women and men, her father, everybody that after the war, once she gets back to Tara, even before the war is over, but once the war ends, so many of the people in her social circle are always looking back. They're always longing for those old days. She isn't. And that's the beginning of my argument that this is not a glorification of the Old South book. This is the story of this woman who didn't do that, who didn't long for the past. And you know what I mean? This is one of those moments in the book that they never really translate in the movie version. You don't really get this sense of her, this part of her. You see her as this kind of glib, calculating businesswoman person who doesn't care consequences to other people of anything she does. There's a lot more to her than that, as a feminist character, if you will. So, I'm going to make so many people so mad, but so mad. But I think this is a really powerful moment in the story. And there's another, in 2 chapters earlier, there's also a shorter quote that speaks to this too. She thought without surprise, looking down from her height, that her shoulders were strong enough to bear anything now, having borne the worst thing that could ever happen to her. So, you know, I'm not going to do spoiler what happened in that scene, but she goes through stuff that changes her character's perspective of the world. She's still in her personal love story stuff with Ashley versus Rhett and all that. She's still just a complete moron, but you know, but there's more to the moments in the story where she's, quote, acting badly, or, you know, doing things as a businesswoman or a woman in her social situation that is not okay with everybody else she knows. Okay, there's more to those moments than maybe it's commonly thought by people who haven't read the book in a long time, or, you know, only saw the movie and the movie only tells part of the story. So anyway, that's one.
Okay.
This has been At the Round Table with Alice
And Sarah E.
of Community Education Arts.
Our nonprofit organization is based in Noblesville, Indiana. You can find us online at CEARts.org.
This activity made possible in part with support from the Indiana Arts Commission and the National Endowment for the Arts, a federal agency.
We'd like to thank James Weston for writing our intro music and for his technical savvy.
Join us next time
At the Round Table.